Having a headache to people is considered normal. No, that's a signal from your body saying there's something going on. Oh, yeah, I get bloated after a meal. That's just normal. No, that's the gut microbiome or the bacteria in your gut being influenced by your diet.
There is a kind of noise we can all recognize, but there is another noise, one far more subtle and far more important, the noise inside our body. In the fatigue we keep pushing through, in the gut issues we tell ourselves are normal, in the sleep we sacrifice because life is busy. It's the body trying to speak in whispers long before it ever needs to shout. This week, I'm joined by Dr. Monisha Bhanote, a board-certified physician, integrative lifestyle medicine expert, culinary medicine specialist, researcher, and founder of Wellkula Institute.
In our first world countries, we are not dying from protein deficiencies. We're dying because we are overfed with a lot of processed food.
In our conversation, Monisha takes us on a journey through the inner world of our health, beginning at the most fundamental level, our cells. She explains how the choices we make every day shape our cellular environment long before symptoms appear. She shows us that understanding cellular health is not just science, it's self-awareness.
I want you to take care of your cells as much as you take care of your cell phone, really.
If they're running low on battery, we plug them in and we charge them, but we don't do the same thing to ourselves.
No, not at all, right?
We uncover why so many people feel depleted, inflamed, or not quite themselves, and why the answer is often found in the quiet intelligence of the gut rather than in the supplement aisle.
All disease really starts in the gut. Like, I can connect every single disease back to how there's a connection in the gut. Honestly, people could eat whatever they want, but then I can't retire because you're going to keep me busy. So
This episode is more than an exploration of health. It is an awakening, a reconnection to the intelligence of your body, a reminder that prevention is powerful, that signals matter, and that well-being begins long before symptoms arrive. This is Dr. Monisha Bhanote, joining us right here on the Noise of Life podcast.
Stepping out of the noise this week and helping us reconnect with the intelligence of our own bodies is my guest this week, Dr. Monisha Bhanote. Welcome, Monisha.
thank you so much, Steve, for having me on your podcast today. Looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, I love the energy and the light that you bring to the world. And obviously, health and wellness is a big thing. It's a noise that everyone has to deal with, but there's a lot of noises around health that people ignore. And that's what we're going to dive into today. When you think about the noise of life, Monisha, what does it speak to you?
Yeah, so I think that we can look at the noise of life in kind of multiple different layers, right? We can kind of think about like even like if we think about the sheath of our body and that like the just like the actual auditory noise that we have, like everything we have exposures to around us, like sitting in offices just or sitting in a restaurant, just all that like kind of noise and clutter. And then I think once we kind of get past that external noise that's happening, there's something that's really happening deeper down. And that's really where my focus and expertise is like what's the noise that's happening inside your body on this kind of cellular level? And that's where I like to kind of think about human bodies and how can we kind of make ourselves a more resilient human is understanding what is the noise that's happening internally? Because some people might not recognize it and they might think like, let me give you an example. Like having a headache to people is considered normal. Oh yeah, I get a headache every now and then. No, that's a signal from your body saying there's something going on. Or one of the ones that I get so much is about oh, yeah, I get bloated after a meal. That's just normal. Or I have gas after a meal. All that's normal. No, that's the gut microbiome or the bacteria in your gut being influenced by your diet. And that's also a signal, right? So when I'm thinking of the human body, I think everything that we experience, whether that's a headache, whether that's bloating, whether that's fatigue, whether that's a skin rash, whether you name it, whatever it might be, um, is a signal that our body is trying to communicate with us. And it's up to us to one, recognize that that's happening and pause and go, hey, what's my body telling me right now? And two, to go, all right, my body's communicating with me. This does not seem right. What does it actually mean? And how do I interpret it?
Mm. And the body always whispers before it shouts, right?
Oh, it definitely does. It definitely does. So, you know, like I said, I speak a lot on this from the point of a cellular perspective, and I think let's put this into like a big picture. We have trillions of cells in our human body. Okay, so many cells, right? And what I do actually in my book, The Anatomy of Well-being, and I'll just show you that. So if people want to check out the book, it's now available like on audiobook too. So you can check out the book. But generally, what I do is I explain to people what's going on in their cells. And here's my little cell model. I love my little cell model because it's not this big, trust me. Our cells are not this big. This is just so I can demo. They're super microscopic. In fact, we need to use a microscope to look at our cells. So, but I like to use this and then use our cell phones, right? So if we have our cell phone, and we have our human cell on the outside of our cell phone is our cell phone case, right? And what do we do? Like the cell phone case is responsible for kind of protecting what's inside, right?
Mm.
Same thing here. We have a cell membrane that is responsible for protecting what's inside. And, sometimes, like, when our cell phone isn't working and our app isn't working, we're like pushing and we're restarting and we're rebooting, or, worst case scenario, the screen cracks, all this stuff happens. We go get a repair, we just trade it in. All of that is actually helping happening on a cellular level inside your cells, and there's changes that are going on, like, microscopically. Like, for example, the nucleus, which holds your DNA and tells the rest of your body what to do. This is one of the first things we see change when disease is starting to happen. Another thing that I think people can recognize now, because it's kind of becoming a little bit more commonplace language, is when their energy is drained, what's going on. And mitochondria, which are these little organelles inside the cells, each and every one of the cells is responsible for making energy for you, just like, when you charge up your phone, right? So I want you to kind of take care of your cells as much as you take care of your cell phone, really, right? So, and I actually use the hashtag cell care, right? Because people know what self care is. Oh, I need to go do this and take care of myself. But I really want you to understand cell care, because that is really going to change the trajectory of your health and well being. Like, and if you can start thinking in that way of about your body, it's going to make life a lot easier.
Mm. I've got a really good friend who runs an organization called Green X7. And I love that you use the cell phone there because he talks about how's your battery, right? So he talks about all the different elements to the body and what you do, your sleep, fun, relationships, human connection, all these different things that he talks about. And he says, we look after our phones, we charge them in every night. If they're running low on battery, we plug them in and we charge them, but we don't do the same
Mhm.
thing to ourselves.
No, not at all, right? Because our cells are constantly communicating with our environment. So they communicate with like the food we eat. They communicate with the light. They communicate with our stress levels. They communicate with our mindset. You name it, your cells are gonna feel all of this kind of dysregulation before our cells are always going to feel what's going on long before everything breaks down in our body. And so when people are like, they get a disease and they're like, oh, I don't know how this happened. It was happening for a long time. You just were ignoring a lot of the signals, right? So this is where we think about like, oh, inflammation coming in. Oh, I didn't sleep as well. Like for the last couple years, my sleep has been disrupted. I've been getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bath. So all these different things are affecting cellular communication. And that's when it breaks down and the body starts going, oh, what's going on?
Yeah. So one of the big questions I was researching up what are people searching right now on the internet around their health, right? And one of the top questions, and
Well,
I'm sure a lot of listeners listening to this will be wondering, but one of the big questions is why am I always so tired? Can you talk to me about what's actually happening in our cells when we're feeling tired all the time?
Yeah, so that's a multi-layered question, but if we go back to there's a few answers there. If we go back to the cell model and the mitochondria that are in here, mitochondria produce energy, also known as ATP, for our body, for our other cells, and they do this through the food we eat. They do this through the air we breathe, and there's a combination of chemical reactions. Now, what happens is that our food supply and what most people are eating with the amount of processed food, you might not feel it in your 20s, okay? Like I remember the days like in my 20s, I could sit down and eat like 10 tacos, like no problem, or like a whole pizza, no problem, right? Our body changes over time. And it starts getting depleted when we aren't giving it the ingredients that it needs. So with that depletion, what I am finding is because I test my patients on this, I'm looking at their vitamins, their minerals, their antioxidants, toxins, heavy metals, all these exposures. It starts making those mitochondrial dysfunctional. So, if you're somebody who has, like, say, a female example of this would be somebody who's used a lot of beauty products in her life, dyed her hair every month, and just like all these chemical insults coming in. Or maybe somebody who is working in a plant where they're going in and they're getting all these respiratory exposures from these chemicals and these compounds. Those are all going to influence what's going on with the cells, and if we don't consider that, like, I even tell my, like, lawn guy because he'll come and he'll, like, do some, like, spraying and stuff, and I'm like, "Why are you not wearing a mask? Like, you're inhaling all of this," you know? And because people don't think these are things that are so regular and normal around that they should be doing that, but, nobody was talking about masks before, like, 2020, but masks were very important for so many other reasons. So, I think, being tired is the body is just depleted is number 1, and it's depleted because when we eat food, what we think is food is not exactly translating into nutrients for the cells.
Mm. Yeah.
That's just a very simplistic explanation.
Yeah. And is that why, when people are unwell or we become unwell, fatigue usually is a common sign, right? It's the cells that are obviously struggling, like to for the body to be working at its best, yeah?
Well, so it's not just what you put in the body, it's also how your body now breaks down the food in order to utilize the ingredients from the food, right? So this
Mm.
comes to how well is our gut working? And most people are like, "Oh, my gut's great." And I'm like, "Oh, really? Tell me. Like, do you feel tired after you've eaten a meal?" "Oh, yeah, I go take a nap." And I'm like, "No, then that means your gut is working extra hard to break down whatever you're eating because you shouldn't wanna go take a nap after you eat, you know?
Yeah.
So, and that's where we can kinda think of, like, the microbiome, like, when I think of the gut, I think in my expertise and my experience after doing this for, like, a couple of decades, that all disease really starts in the gut. Like, I can connect every single disease back to how there's a connection in the gut, and many people don't think, like, "Oh, my anxiety is linked to my gut, or my mental well-being is linked to my gut." But when you think about where are your feel-good neurotransmitters made, like serotonin and dopamine and GABA, a majority of them are made in the gut,
Mhm.
right? So if your gut is not functional and optimal, then you don't have the ability to make those neurotransmitters, and then that will ultimately affect your mood.
Yeah. I see one of the big issues these days is that people go to the GP, and I say to people, go to your general practitioner, get your blood tests. But a lot of the time, and I know in the past, and you and I have had conversations recently around tests I've had in the past, and the GP will say, oh, yeah, they're all good. But then, you talk to someone like yourself, Manisha, and you go, oh, I would have been concerned about this, or hang on, yes, this is in the range, but I would have picked up on that that was an issue at that point. Whereas the normal GP goes, "Oh, it's okay."
Yeah. So that's a very interesting question because it's also a very common question, right? So when we consider going to the GP, we have certain I would say reference ranges that are created for laboratories, okay? And
Mhm.
these reference ranges are just kind of not necessarily created on a healthy human, they're just created on a okay, we don't see disease human, right? And so when you're going to your GP or you're going to any other practitioner, I mean, it could even be a specialist, but if they don't know how to interpret blood tests, that makes it even more challenging because if we're relying on the, oh, the up or the down, like high or low, parameters, that's just one aspect of it. Um, we're not thinking about the functionality of how the body actually works and how it might relate to that person individually based off of their genetics and their lifestyle and that kind of stuff. So I'll give you an example. Like vitamin D is a really common one.
Mm.
Vitamin D, most practitioners are really happy if your vitamin D is at 30. No, you're not deficient, you're fine. But vitamin D is technically a hormone and the body does much better if it's in like the 50 to 60, sometimes even 70 range depending on the individual. And low vitamin D levels have not only been linked to immunity problems, but they've obviously been linked to bone health. They've also been linked to breast cancer. So a lot of breast cancer patients are severely deficient in vitamin D.
Mm.
And and it's not as simple as just supplementing vitamin D because vitamin D actually like can become toxic if you have too much. This is where I always tell people don't just go buy a bunch of supplements and just start taking. The body also does not work that way. It's more complex than that. Um but this is just getting back to usually when we're seeing disease show up, a significant portion of that part of the body has been, I would say, probably in the range of 70-75% damaged before real abnormality levels are coming up. And that could apply to, cholesterol levels, that could apply to thyroid levels. So if we're waiting until the labs are just enough, and what we're waiting for is that they're just enough so we can give you a medication. That is, in my viewpoint and my expertise, not preventative medicine. Okay.
Oh,
So we want to go, all right, this is how the human body works. This is how your specific body works based off of your genetics and your lifestyle. Here's your symptoms you're telling me that you're experiencing, whether they be physical, mental, spiritual, whatever they be. Let's connect them all up to see what's actually going on.
yeah, yeah. There's 2 questions and I think it's a good way segue into that, but there's 2 questions, which is, people listening will be saying, "Okay, you've talked about gut microbiome, how do I fix my gut?" And then I know what's gonna lead into that is, what should I be eating to be healthy, right? These are 2 questions that people are searching, and I know they're gonna link together, and I know this is your wheelhouse. I know you love this topic, so
Yes.
I can't wait to hear the insights.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So, and there is let me preface this by there is a lot of both confusion and misinformation out there. Okay. Um, with for whatever reasons, people having their own agendas. Okay. I have no agenda except to retire. So if everybody could just stay healthy, then I don't need to work. That's my only agenda, right? It's not going to make me any money, but that's literally, it's a very simple agenda. But what I have found is, and if you do look at the longevity diets, first of all, Mediterranean is studied quite well from a longevity diet standpoint. What are people eating? They are eating predominantly a whole foods plant-based diet. Yes, they might have some fish in there. Yes, they might have some small amount of meat, but the amount is so minuscule compared to the amount of like fruits, veggies, whole grains, nuts, seeds, this kind of stuff that they're eating, right? Whereas at least in the standard American diet, we've kind of switched that where we are very, very meat heavy. And like, it's funny. I was talking to one of my patients who is a cancer patient the other day, And she's like, "Oh yeah, I ate string beans last week." And I'm like, "If you can identify the one vegetable you ate last week, we are not fixing that microbiome." And there was an excellent study done that showed that having 30 different plant foods a week will lead to the healthiest microbiome, okay? And that's a variety, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds. It's not just and
Can we just
lentils, beans,
can you just
that kind
repeat
of
that?
stuff.
Can you just repeat that?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Having 30 different plant foods a week, including vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, lentils, is the best way to optimize your microbiome. And maybe I haven't convinced you yet why you want to optimize your microbiome, but your microbiome actually, you have more microbiome, or let me put bacteria, yeast, fungi, all this stuff in your body than you do human cells. And if you do not make best friends with them, they will turn against you and they will continue to help create disease in your body. In fact, we have linked certain bacteria to certain diseases. For example, H. pylori is a stomach bacteria, which is linked to gastric cancer. Okay. Now
Yep.
imagine and this is one that's actually easily transmitted household to household, meaning, like, if one person has it, many people get it. There's been different E. coli that is connected to, colon cancers. There's different, other bacteria connected to bladder cancers, so there is, this is why we want, like, the healthier microbiome.
There's probably people listening to this that are like, "I can't even think of 30 plant foods." Yeah?
Yeah, first, it takes a little bit of intentionality, but it is possible. And, I always get that whole, like, oh, I know what I was gonna say. Why do we care about our microbiome? Because I was going back to what diseases. So, let me kinda go through my, like, little imagery I have of diseases. So, if I go to the skin system, so if you have eczema, if you have acne, if you have psoriasis, if you have skin cancer, fix your microbiome. If I go to your cardiovascular system, if you have high blood pressure, high cholesterol, heart failure, fix your microbiome. If you have anxiety, depression, ADHD, ADD, family history of Parkinson's, family history of Alzheimer's, fix your microbiome. If you have respiratory issues, which is allergies, postnasal drip, um, coughing, COPD, fix your microbiome. If you have autoimmune issues like autoimmune thyroiditis, gastritis, lupus, what else can we have in autoimmune? Sjogren's, autoimmune gastritis, like all the autoimmunities, because 70% of your immune system lives in your gut. All right. So if your gut is not good, your immune system is fighting against you. If you have, some of the metabolic diseases, so metabolic, I think of like, obesity, right? So there are certain things, certain bacteria that help you be obese,
Mm,
right?
wow.
If you have diabetes as a metabolic disease, if you have, fatigue, like mitochondrial dysfunction, if you have cancer, all of that. So all of it leads back to this central kind of like, I guess, like, center of like a wheelbarrow, like, wheel, right? The cork in the center is the gut. All these diseases kinda come out in this, like, periphery. And, so what do you wanna do? Number 1, you wanna start with 30 different plant foods, okay, right? So, high fiber diets, which are going to be by eating plants, can actually decrease these metabolic diseases by about 50%. And
Wow.
most people are not getting fiber because what foods don't contain fiber? Well, most processed foods, but sugar, dairy, and meat do not have fiber. So if your diet consists of, like, say, a keto diet or something like that, and you're like, I'm not touching the fiber, you're not feeding the microbiome. Um, so second thing would be eat the rainbow. So I always say that. So this is where we go back to Roy G. Biv. So eat the rainbow, not the Skittles kind. I don't know what the rainbow dessert or treat is down under, but, in the US, it's Skittles, the Skittles rainbow, they're like, I don't know, these awful candies. And, so Roy G. Biv, red, orange, green, yellow, indigo, blue, violet, eat all the colors. What's the easy way to do this? Meal prep. I mean, if I showed you my refrigerator right now, I've got like 6 beautiful like salad jars with all the little levels of different colors and stuff. I actually should grab it and show you. So that's the other thing. Eat the rainbow. Let's see. From a nutrition standpoint, I think if you can start there, that's going to be a really good start because then there's other little things that you're going to want to do to help your microbiome is to help optimal digestion is after you eat, don't just sit down on the couch, go for like a 10-minute walk to help lower blood glucose and kind of help the digestion move along. Another thing that I recommend is intermittent fasting. The gut needs rest also, right? The
Mm.
digestion is the in the happens in the parasympathetic state. So rest and digest. Um, but if we keep layering on food on top of food, that digestion never really happens. The other thing is, I would say, chew your food. This is another one. Like, I have people, I'm like, they're just, like, eating in the car, they're just putting so digestion actually starts before you put food in your mouth because you need
Yep.
all these enzymes and stuff to start breaking it down. Um, so you could be eating the best diet, but if you're, like, in stress mode and you're on the go and you're not actually sitting and having your meal and focused on it, you're not gonna get the best nutrition out of that. Um,
And that's one of the things
let
in
me see.
Italy. One of the things in Italy that we were talking about when I went to a men's retreat, we're talking about how it's amazing when you go to a restaurant or you're eating out in Europe a lot of the time. They eat so much slower than us Australians or Americans, right? Like we just scoff food a lot of the time, right? And
Yeah,
they actually talk a lot more. Like it's interesting, you can go to a restaurant in Europe and you can tell the tourists because they're the ones with their cell phones in their hand. Everyone else, there's not a cell phone on the table, and
yeah,
everyone's just conversing. They have a sip of red wine. They're
yeah,
really enjoying the food and the experience. Whereas you can see the tourists, they come in, they want to order straight away. They want to down their soft drinks and their drinks and scoff their food, and then they're out the door. And it's kind of like I don't know. Europe, I think, just has this more just experience around eating, and they eat so much slower.
They do, and, it also takes longer to get your meal and then the meals in between, but what this allows is for you to recognize your state of being full as well, because often, if we're just eating on top of eating and we don't take that pause to, like, talk in between or be present in between, we can't recognize that we're actually full from what we're eating.
Ugh.
So I do like that about, Europe a lot. I think the other thing is, hydration is also important because when you think about I've had patients who are like, "Okay, I'm gonna go eat the veggies," and then they'll eat this, like, whole thing of broccoli, and then they'll just feel like bloated, and they're like, "Well, broccoli makes me bloated," and I'm like, "No, you can't just switch, like, overnight because it's the bacteria that help break down the food, and if you don't have that bacteria, you need to, like, slowly get into that adjustment. And when you increase your fiber, you also have to increase your hydration, the amount of water, so you can help think about, like, dry straw going through your colon. Ugh, that's not gonna feel good unless there's some, like, hydration there to help it kinda, push along. Um, so I would consider hydration as well. I mean, if you can't start with, like, shifting your entire meal, I would say just start your meal with, like, the first 3 to 5 bites just of veggies. It
Mm.
is, like, a great way to start, and then you could go have what you need, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
And talk to me about sleep as a lifestyle factor as well
oh,
around, your gut and your overall health.
yeah. Yeah, so sleep is significantly important because when your body is in sleep mode, that is when it's literally repairing DNA. So think about sleep as a appointment with your DNA to communicate with your DNA, because when our DNA gets damaged, that's when mutations start showing up. When mutations start showing up, that's when diseases like cancer start showing up, right? So the beautiful thing about sleep is that we have, especially if you're like feeling like your mental well-being is off, I would say the two places to start before you're like, oh, I need to go to the gym, start with what you're putting on your plate and how you're sleeping. Okay.
Mm,
Because when you sleep at night, we have a separate kind of housekeeping system going on in the brain called the glymphatic system. And what that does is it clears out misfolded proteins and bad stuff that then kind of get cleared out of our body, like almost like toxins in a way, like our lymphatic and the rest of our body does. But it gets cleared out, and that allows like our body to, or our brain especially, not to build up these things that aren't doing anything for it.
mm. Yep. Yeah, brilliant.
So, definitely, keep in mind that the things that disrupt our sleep is, light, right? So light will disrupt your circadian rhythm, the way you make, cortisol and melatonin, your, sleep, circadian pattern, hormones. The cell phone light. So if you're just like in bed and you got your cell phone light on, like it's not helping you make melatonin. And the solution isn't to go take a melatonin pill. Unless you're like, "I'm just not gonna do anything, I'm just gonna take all the pills." Um, so that's a big one I think I see a lot of people do. The other one is, one of the best ways to reset your circadian rhythm is to get sunlight in the morning. So first 10 minutes of the day, make sure you're exposed to sun.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Now, there's obviously when we're talking about food and we're talking about lifestyle factors, there's a lot of myths and things out there. And I think a lot of people listening to this will understand this as well, is that a lot of the time people will hear something and they'll go, oh, they'll be chatting to someone and they'll go, oh, carnivore diet. So they'll go and research it, but then they research the carnivore diet and then they absorb all the things that back up what they're thinking of doing, right? They don't look at the bad, they just focus on the things. So then someone goes, "Oh, carnivore diet is brilliant because I heard a guy at the gym say carnivore diet and I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that." And they back up, they look for information that's gonna back up what they wanna do so then they can feel better.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So here's the thing. And then, of course I get the, oh, well, it's grass fed and it's hormone free and it's like all these things. But and then they'll be like, "Oh, but our ancestors used to eat meat, so I need to eat meat." And I'm like, "Yeah, but that meat that they used to eat back then is different than the meat we have now, even if you do go grass fed and you go hormone free, okay? Because if you kind of think about it as when we have like evolved, right? So different animals, different biology back then. The cows that we had 100 years ago, because my mom grew up on a farm, okay? Those cows are not the same cows we have now. You're not gonna find them. So the animals we used to eat then were extremely lean. Even our animals are more obese because we fill them with stuff so we can get more meat out of them, right?
Yep.
So we're not eating ancestral lean animals that we're like catching. The omega profiles, which are our omega 3 and omega 6s and these compounds that we kind of want, the ratios were different back then compared to how they are now. Um, if we think about the ecosystem, like our land is not our land anymore. Our land is full of chemicals. In the last 100 years, the amount of chemicals put in our ground between, pesticides, between water supply, between um, the farms and what's being sprayed and all that. I mean, and now, regenerative farms and all that is coming up, but we have a lot of repair to do. So
Yep.
people can kind of use that as an excuse, but the reality is you're still gonna develop chronic disease. It's not the same. Additionally, like I said, the cows that are being made now, they're really being made and bred for a higher fat content too, right? Animals are living unnatural lifespans, and so we can get to eat them. Um, yeah, it's not necessary.
See?
We can survive without them.
So
Just
here's another one.
here's the other thing with
Oh,
like e even if you eat meat, you're gonna heat it up, and meat in itself creates this compound. It's called TMAO. Okay. When you cook meat, it changes the proteins in the meat and makes this compound. And that compound, TMAO, is carcinogen. It's cancer causing. So, but if you put like veggies on a barbecue grill, that won't happen
yeah.
because they just don't have that protein combination. Yeah. I mean, you
So
could honestly,
one of the
people
things
could
I hear,
eat whatever they want, but then I can't retire because you're going to keep me busy. So,
yeah, but one of the things, and I know you are plant-based yourself,
yeah,
but when someone says to you,
not
Manisha,
forever. I mean, I'm plant-based since 2014 because of what I know. I didn't grow up
yeah,
plant-based, you know?
yeah, yeah,
So that I
but
think that that's a difference, right?
when someone says to you, and this is common, you'll hear this all the time, "But Manisha, how do you get your protein?"
Trust me, I'm not protein deficient, I'm not B12 deficient, I'm not vitamin D deficient. In fact, many of my patients who do eat meat are also, B12 deficient. It's kinda interesting. Um, so I get my protein from lentils, beans, and tofu, and nuts
Yep.
and seeds, and there's some protein in veggies too. In our first world countries, we are not dying from protein deficiencies. I promise you, we're not.
Mm.
We're dying because we are overfed and we are fed with a lot of processed food. And if we go back to the meat profile, that changes that microbiome into a inflammatory state. Even if you're eating grass fed, hormone free, the profile that happens, with an animal-based diet changes your gut microbiome.
So obviously recently we've been talking about my tests. I obviously went through burnout. I went through mental health, depression, anxiety, fatigue, all those kind of things. And recently getting tests, I was low in iron. So I went for a colonoscopy. Colonoscopy found some things. And now actually being diagnosed with bowel cancer, right? And by the time this episode comes out, I'll be over surgery and those kind of things. But I really want to dig into, because I know a lot of people these days, we know there's a lot of cancer, there's a lot of disease out there. What what can someone do when they hit that event in life where their lifestyle, their nutrition, their whole body is out of whack and it's created this disease, it's created this event that they hit? What are some of the things that they can do at that point to unlock more around what's going to help them get through that?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is to actually understand in the process what is going on. Okay? Because cancer in itself does not happen overnight. It's not like a single process that all of a sudden. It's really an evolution of a process driven by inflammation. It's driven by dysbiosis, which is imbalance in your gut microbiome. Remember, I said everything leads back to the gut. It leads to DNA damage, and then ultimately, the part you can control is the lifestyle that's going in it, right? So the lifestyle inputs. So and I'm gonna use colon cancer as an example, especially because when I think of colon cancer, this is one of the main, cancers that we are seeing now in a much younger population, under 40,
Mm,
okay?
yep.
And they don't need to have a family history or anything like that. This is lifestyle, like, driven, okay? And, so your family history can be completely negative and, so first thing that's going to happen in the development of colon cancer, as an example, is going to be dysbiosis. And dysbiosis is an imbalance in your best friends, right? So you got the party animals in there going, "Oh, we love the pizza and we love the burgers. Let's just keep growing and he's going to feed us more," right? As opposed to the microbiome that will keep inflammation down. So what you end up having is an overgrowth of the inflammatory species, specifically those E. coli strains that I was talking about, and then another one called a Fusobacterium. And these are all things that luckily now we can test for. That's the beauty of it, right? Because our testing has become more advanced and we can do microbiome testing. So you grow the bad ones and you lose the beneficial ones that are protective, like the lactobacillus and the bifido. And one of the other groups I wanna go back to before I kinda continue with the pathogenesis of this is I did not mention eating probiotic-rich foods. So that's not something that's common, at least, like, in the American culture, but if you look at other cultures, probiotic-rich foods would be the ones that already contain a lot of the beneficial bacteria. So, like, in, Korea, they eat kimchi. In, Germany, they eat sauerkraut. So it's like your fermented foods, right? Yogurt is gonna buy kefir in the Middle East, right? So that's already giving you that beneficial, bacteria. So that would be the third thing after your rainbow, and then your 30 plants, your rainbow, and then the probiotic rich food, okay?
Yep.
Mandatory for your week. Okay. So first thing, loss of the good species. Second thing that happens is that chronic inflammatory pathway. So inflammation is a driver for all chronic diseases. So when that inflammation happens, it causes the body to produce more inflammatory chemicals or cytokines, okay? And when we have these inflammatory chemicals that circulate around, what like to do is they like to go and damage DNA. They like to go and damage the stuff that's inside of the center of the cell, right? They're like, hey, let's go cause inflammation and make these cells turn different. Then after that, something called epigenetic changes happens, right? And epigenetic is where your DNA becomes kind of weakened and these mutations kind of silently arise. And it's based off of your lifestyle. Epigenetics it can be changed based off of your lifestyle. From here, the earliest, when we're talking specifically about colon cancer, is a polyp gets made. A polyp is like a 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter little kind of nubbin that comes off of the normal colon cells, and this is the first, what we call structural sign of dysplasia or precancerous lesions happening. This is why we do colonoscopies or screening exams, because when a gastroenterologist is going in and doing a colonoscopy, he's going in to check, for inflammation, but he's also mainly going in to see is there any masses or polyps. And like I said, they can be literally a millimeter, 2 millimeters, so super, super tiny. And if they can be removed at that time, they do remove them. And I mean, the number of they're called tubular adenomas. If you pull up your pathology report, if anybody has that pathology report, the number of tubular adenomas I have seen in patients is beyond the thousands because it's like so many people have them. You want a clean bill of health, a clean colonoscopy report. You don't want any polyps in there, especially tubular adenomas. And the problem with this is that they can be asymptomatic for years. So you don't even know
Uh,
you have them. You're just living your life, going your family vacations, doing all this stuff and going, I'm fine. My doctor told me I'm fine. My blood test was fine. Um, but what's going on then is these little guys, they sit in there. And then on the side over here, we're getting this kind of like, I like to think of the body as like an ecosystem, and you're getting this ecosystem disruption going on. So this is going to alter like having that low fiber will feed the tumor growth, right? So having a low fiber diet, meaning you're not eating your fruits and veggies, is gonna fuel that tumor even more. Um, then your immune system goes, I don't know, maybe these are the guys that are supposed to be here, these mutated cells. Like, let's just let them stay here because your immune system fails to recognize. And that's really what a
mm,
tumor is. This immune system fails to recognize that something's abnormal there and it lets it kind of explode, right? And then that's where we have that classic kind of malignant or tumorous transformation because now we've turned on these genes that just because we have the genes doesn't mean we turn them on. It's kinda like a gun being loaded with a bullet and only we're responsible for like, kinda pulling that trigger, and then it turns on KRAS mutations and P53 mutations and all these common ones that, like, I'm specifically talking about colon cancer, that we see. So once those mutations are turned on, everything else kind of fails. And then that's where colorectal cancer comes on, right? But there's a lifestyle and all the mental health and all the stress and the immunity. There's so many things. There's not one thing that develops cancer.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's
Because
just
I
a
know
gist.
yeah, so obviously, sharing my story and you know this, and I've shared the reports with you, the first colonoscopy, which was from a low iron, chronically low kind of iron result in my blood tests, and colonoscopy found two small polyps, a 5 millimeter, a 7 millimeter, and both of those were removed. And then obviously there was a 5 centimeter lesion that was found, tested, came back precancerous, went in for another colonoscopy, had that, tried to be removed, only could remove 80%, tested the tissues that were removed from that, and, obviously diagnosed with bowel cancer, going to go in and have obviously a resection, and hopefully that's curative. But it's, it's interesting as well because I've looked into a lot of research, and I think even through my mental health journey and now my physical journey through what I'm going to go through now, it's really about raising more awareness and being able to have more conversations and put more information out there. Like in Australia, once you turn about 48, you get in the mail. I don't know if you get this in America, but in the mail after 48, you get a free bowel screening test, right? So we get that in Australia. Now, the research is Oh, only 61% of the people that get those in Australia don't
Mhm.
act on it. They put it down the side of their seat in their car. They, just forget about it, right? And I've had some conversations in recent days and in the last couple of weeks since I've been going through this, and I've said to people and shared my story, and they're like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm one of those people, right?" And I've actually had a number of people that have
Mhm.
said, "Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this week, or I'm booking in with my doctor." And
Yeah.
that's a great positive reaction, that
Yeah.
I can build that awareness in people, and anyone listening. If you haven't had a checkup, if you haven't had that test, that you're allowed to. But in saying that, I'm 41. Right? So I
Yeah.
don't get the
You sh
bowel screening test, and I also have read up in the research is that even if you do the bowel screening test and it comes back it's fine, it doesn't mean that your colon is fine.
No, so that's a good point, and speaking of which, I got my mammogram yesterday, right? So there is
Woohoo!
preventative exam that we want to
Yeah.
get, but so this is not to the time of our grandparents, okay? Because since 1990, we can basically say that colon cancer has increased by about 140% in individuals less than 50 years old. So yeah, there's the 50-year-old like screening, but should we be adjusting the screening requirement based off of um, our current lifestyles, right? You're gonna find more, and same thing even with breast cancer with women. Like the youngest female patient I have is 18 years old. We're seeing younger and younger breast cancers.
18.
18, yeah. Yeah, 18
Wow.
years old, beautiful girl, all she wanted to do was focus on college, and she's like, "These chemo appointments are, like, taking up my time." Like, at 18, you can't even understand what's going on, you know?
Mm.
Um, but our environment has changed, our lifestyles have changed, our exposures have changed. Like I said, this is not the world of our grandparents, like, we are living in a totally different world, which means we need to change, like, the way we approach things. Um, and I think being aware of how, at least now in the States, like, our bacon, our, dogs, all this stuff that is a class 1 carcinogen. I mean, it literally is, but we still serve hot dogs in our baseball stadiums and our football stadiums and all that, but it causes it's, like, already established. That and then bacon is another one, like, I have an assistant, and she's like she was listening to me talk to a patient who had a cancer diagnosis, and she's like, "Does that mean I need to take my bacon and throw it away?" And I'm like, "Well, you don't have to do any it's just the facts, right?" So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can do whatever you
And
um,
and so many people
and
hide behind the, "But you only live once, Manisha."
hey, that's you know what? That's absolutely true, and that is your choice how you wanna live your life. So, yeah, you can eat whatever you want, drink, do the partying. But I will tell you, it is a lot more expensive, both mentally, financially, physically, to be sick in this world than it is to prevent disease. Because if you're like, oh, I want to go and travel the world, or I want to go and do and accomplish all these things, once you get sick, that life is gonna be much more challenging. And I can tell you this coming from a perspective of so many of my patients go, "Well, why didn't anybody tell me about this before?" Like, when they get diagnosed, "Why hasn't anybody talked to me about what I eat? Why hasn't anybody talked to me about my exercise routine? Why?" And I'm like, "Well, don't ask me why. I've been saying it forever. I mean, I wrote an entire 95,000 page, like 95,000 word book on it because I want you to know." But often we are not ready to listen. So now let's circle back. We are not ready to listen to the signs and the signals our cells are giving us because we are more focused on the noise of the outside world than quieting our inner body. And I always say that stillness is a biologic need. We need time to be still so we can actually listen to what's going on in our body.
Yep. I love it. I know people are going to be listening to this going, some people are going to, and there'll be people going, oh, I've got a question about this, or I've got a question about that. But it's interesting, you know, someone said to me the other day, they said, "Oh, but you only live once, Steve." And I'm like, "Yeah, but how long do you want to live?" Right.
Mhm.
And we talk about longevity, and I know that's a passion for you. And longevity is mentioned. You can't probably go a day without hearing longevity at least once, right? Like it's this whole marketing thing now. And it was interesting. I loved when we were talking at Synergy, when they were talking about, yeah, okay, well, you know, longevity is great, but do you if you're going to live to 140 or 50 and still be an asshole, like, like we are talking about longevity is actually living as long as you can to the best that you can, and if you live to 90 or 95 and you can still travel and you can still do the things you can enjoy, you can still hang out with family and you can still live a good quality of life, then that's longevity.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not about a number, it's about, like, how can you live a healthy, disease-free life? Because we can definitely make you live longer and stick you, like, put a whole bunch of, like, tubes in you, connect you to machines, and make you live longer. That is not a problem. We can make that happen, but that is not living life, right?
No.
So, I think, yeah, and you gotta decide how much stuff do you want to do in this world. Like, for me, like, I've got a lot of stuff I still wanna do. I got a lot of places I wanna travel to. I got, you know, a lot of things to do. And I think that's also a driver of how we handle disease, like, when we think of it from a resilience standpoint is, like, and this is one of the questions that I always ask in my initial consults with patients is what gives you meaning and purpose in life? And everybody needs to identify what is their meaning and purpose because and it's okay if you don't have one right now and you're listening, but I highly recommend you to like think upon this question and find that because when you do get blindsided with a diagnosis or something happens, that is what you're going to lean into what's going to drive you to heal.
Mm. Yep. Yeah, what's gonna drive you to heal? Because it's that hope, right? It's that hope that,
Mhm.
like, at the end of the day, if you don't have that hope of and you don't have that vision to look forward to things,
Mhm.
then you don't have anything to fight for.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Manisha,
I
if
mean, we can
you
talk for hours. I mean, we'll have to do
I know.
what I would love is for the listeners to put in their questions to their podcast,
Yep.
and I would love to do a part 2 so we can kinda answer the questions that we've kind of raised for people because I do wanna provide them with answers just at least from my expertise, like, my experience of literally diagnosing millions of diseases under the microscope and seeing everything from, like, uterus specimens to mastectomy specimens to colon specimens to kidneys and all of this. Literally, I'm like holding them in my hands, like, and like examining them. Like the way I've seen cells and been able to do that is most people never see that in their lifetime, which is why I'm so passionate about how you can heal your body, because I know how disease happens, and it just doesn't happen, like I said, overnight. It's a process, and I want you to, like, kinda go back and, like, prevent a lot of this, because a lot of it is preventable. In fact, 90 to 95% of cancers are not genetics, they're lifestyle.
Wow, just let that sink in for people that are listening, you know? 90 to 95%. Wow. So, Manisha, we're definitely gonna catch up regularly, and there'll be more episodes because I know there's gonna be a lot of questions, but what's your key messages to those listening today around what they can do around their health, what they need to be aware of, and what you really wanna tell them, to help them today?
Yeah. I think we definitely talked about quite a few things, but if you want to have a calmer mind, if you wanna have, a longer, more resilient life, I want you to start with your cells, right? And start thinking of your body and going, "Oh, what's my cell trying to tell me today?" It's like almost having a conversation with it. And I can help you translate what your cells are saying. That's pretty much what my weekly newsletter is, on how your cells are communicating with you. But it's also, what are the lifestyle practices that you can adjust? What are the daily rituals that you can put in that are specific to you, that make you the best version of yourself? So I think if we can look at it from that perspective, that would be key one. And then, like I said, I have plenty of resources. Go check out my book, my audiobook, um, get on the newsletter. Just, you know, forget that you ignored biology class in ninth grade, and realize that without, like, that is the understanding we need if we wanna be, like, successful, like, entrepreneurs and CEOs and coaches and all these professions we wanna do. You're gonna be able to do them a lot better if you're healthier.
Yeah, a great, great message there. Manisha, for those that wanna reach out to you, connect with you, what are the best ways?
So my website is drbanote.com. All my platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, LinkedIn are all Dr. Benoit. It's the easiest way. There's only one of me. And if you want to make sure you got to the right person, look for the one wearing green. So if it's somebody else that is in a different color, it's not me, because I'm usually in green, just to help you identify me. And that would really be the best way to connect with me and get on the newsletter. See what I'm talking about. I think you're gonna find it like, oh, why didn't anybody ever tell me about that? And then, of course, just like you do, Steve, I do retreats. So, that's always a fun way to come, learn some of this stuff and actually get in the space where, you are allowing yourself to listen to your body. And it's just amazing what can happen in a 5-day retreat, like the transformations I see in people. I'm like, yep, we just reset your biology. Let's keep it up now.
Yeah. And I know I've been really appreciative over the last, few weeks of your support. I've sent you some reports and we've been communicating, and even some of my reports that I've done 12, 18 months ago. And you're like, oh, I would have been concerned about this, or I would have been concerned about that. And oh, hang on, this probably showed that there was something going on. Whereas the specialists or the naturopaths or the doctors that I was seeing at the time just looked at it more like, okay, yep, no, that's fine. No, that's good. So I've really appreciated your support over the last few weeks, and I'm looking forward to continuing that connection. And for those that are listening that want to fix their health, go and grab your book, reach out. I know there's so much information that you put on your social media channels and online as well on your website. So I really encourage those listening to go and reach out to that, because I know how much I've learned just in the short time that you and I have met each other. And I just love that, as I said at the start of the episode, your energy and light in the world of really just this passion and purpose of making people healthier, and really focused on prevention rather than intervention.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one more thing, don't get mad at your doctors because you think they aren't telling you something. It's not quite like
No.
that because we only know what we know, but my problem is I'm like, I know way like, I've studied like, I have 5 specialties, and 3 of the specialties that I have, most practitioners don't, which one of them allows me to really interpret clinical laboratory, but, like, I have a, clinical pathology background, cytopathology, anatomic pathology, so that's really the disease on this, like, cellular level, so which allows me to understand the interpretation of lab tests, which
Yep.
just like people like, I can relate this to how many doctors aren't trained in nutrition. Many also aren't necessarily trained in laboratory interpretation at this depth, you know?
Yep.
So, they might tell you to eat healthier because, they want you to eat healthier from a nutrition standpoint, and they might tell you your blood work's okay, but it's that depth, and I think that's where, my expertise, like, it's just for my training, so don't get mad at your doctors, just yeah. But listen to your body first, right? So listen to your cells, listen to what your body's trying to tell you, and start identifying trends and stuff.
Yeah. And I also think, from going through my burnout, my mental health, now my physical journey, it if I wasn't seeing a psychiatrist every 6 months as a maintenance plan, he wouldn't have said to me, "Hey, I'd like to see your iron results," which would have then led me to get an updated blood test on my iron, which then showed through my GP, who then referred me to a colonoscopy, who, that gastroenterologist has now referred me to, like, I actually think in life, you have to have a team of people, right? It's not just one
Yes.
person. Your GP isn't your
Yeah,
only person that
absolutely.
you're dealing with, because everyone's got their own specialties and everyone looks and double checks and thinks about things differently. So I find that
Mhm,
you need a team in life. It's like if you want to be fit and healthy, okay, you go to the gym, but you also want to make sure that you're getting tests with your GP. You're also wanting to make
mhm.
sure, chiropractor, physio, all these different things. It's
Yep,
like a professional sports person, right?
we all
They
need a
don't
team.
they we all need a team. So I think
This is a village now to do stuff these days, you know?
yeah.
Don't try and do everything on your own.
Yeah, it's a great point. So, well, thank you, and I look forward to our next episode, as I'm sure listeners will do as well. Thanks,
Thank you
Manisha.
so much, Steve.